Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to Creative Play Every Day, a live webinar presented by Te Ōtautahi. Ko Jamie Hanton toku ingoa. I'm a community arts advisor at Christchurch City Council and a member of Te Ōtautahi's advisory group. I'm here to introduce the work of Te Ōtautahi and this evening's webinar, but first I'd like to open with a karakia. Ko te kawa o runga, ko te kawa o raro, ko te kawa ora, ko te kawa ora, e rongo e whakaerehia ki runga, turuturu o whiti, whakamoa kia tina, huie, tai kie. Welcome to this evening's webinar, presented by Te Ōtautahi. Te Ōtautahi is an open national rōpū comprised of like-minded individuals, organisations and collectives that are drawn together by our mutual dedication to understanding the benefits of relationship between creativity and hauora. Our whānau come from across diverse disciplines and contexts, including the arts creative landscapes, health, education, community, social care, local government, and research and policy environments. We are linked together by a vision of a healthier, more flourishing Aotearoa through arts, culture, and creativity, and seeing these valued as vital contributors to health and well-being for everyone in Aotearoa. Throughout 2021 and 2022, the Alliance has embarked on creating a series of webinars looking at the role of creativity in our lives. These webinars have been generously supported by Creative New Zealand and Manatū Taonga. All our previous webinars are available to view on the Te Ōtautahi website. This evening's webinar, Creative Play Every Day, is facilitated by Dr. Jeremy Mayall. Jeremy is a composer, artist, researcher, and performer who works in music, sound art, installation, and multimedia formats. He's also the CEO of Creative Waikato, a member of Te Raupu Manatū, and is a joyful advocate for arts, culture, and creativity, and the role that they play as an essential part of community wellbeing. I'll now pass to Jeremy to introduce this evening's kaupapa and our wonderful guests. Jeremy?
Kia ora e te whānau, ko Jeremy Mayall tōku ingoa I whānau mai a Haughey kirikiri roa, ko ahau te kaitito puoro, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to this webinar discussion, Creative Play Every Day. It's always a real thrill for me to be a part of these activities where I get the opportunity to be having a kōrero with creative friends about the things that excite me and drive my own curiosity. These are moments in time that spark joy for me, and I hope that this shared space of creative thinking resonates with everyone who's listening and joining us tonight as well. Tonight we're talking about creative play. Creative play is a powerful thing that I think should be part of everyone's life. Play can happen anywhere, at any time, with anything and with anyone. If we give ourselves the space to play and feed our curiosity, we can tap into exciting possibilities. And when we allow ourselves to indulge in a playful creative process, we can let go of things, we can find new inspiration, we can learn and innovate, we can find deeper connections to ourselves and to those around us. Tonight we're going to flow into a discussion with a group of creative humans who are here with me, sharing the vision of this kaupapa as we will explore different pathways to make more of creative play in your everyday life, as well as talking about how play and general creative curiosity can be a useful process for everyone, even outside of the realms of artistic endeavour. It will connect us into benefits for well-being, for balance, for focus, and hopefully we'll all come away with new ideas of how we can bring play into our everyday lives. Joining me tonight for excellent creative people, we've got Dr. Laura Haughey, Kim Morton, Stephanie Christie, and Chris Lamsam. We were originally going to have Horomona Horo joining us as well, but unfortunately he's unable to join us tonight, but we thank him for his ongoing commitment to this kaupapa. So to start us off, I'm going to pass around our virtual room here and ask all of our participants to introduce themselves and to tell us all about their creative practice. So to kick us off tonight, I'm going to hand over to Laura. Welcome, Laura.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Laura. I am a theatre maker. I'm a director, I'm a dramaturg, and I like to research stuff. I'm currently doing a research fellowship with the European Commission, where I get to play with lots of ideas. So yeah, I like to take things that inspire me and that are important to me and work with other people with what inspires them and what's important to them. And together we make original theatre work. to share with other wonderful humans in our audiences. I teach at drama schools and at universities, and what I love most about this is getting to support people to go through their own creative journeys and processes, and support them to create their own artistic creations in whatever medium that might be. And I go through lots of creative processes myself in my own work. With every new piece I make, I start from nothing. I love theatre. It's a live transactional event. And I think what I love about it the most is that it enables us to make a shared experience, a chance to develop a shared imaginative space. So a big blockbuster film can do lots of the work for you with amazing special effects. And my work's not like that. It's I like making work where there are no special effects, really simple sets, very lo-fi, not much at all apart from humans on stage, inviting the audience to enter into a shared imaginative space where the performers simultaneously create the world they're inhabiting, and respond to it. So yeah, most importantly, all the things I do, I get to play and I get to experiment and I get to collaborate, and get inspired by others, which I feel hugely blessed by. So that's me. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. It's really great to hear about the kind of depth and breadth of your work, and I'm sure we'll kind of delve more into the play components of that as we move forward. Up next, Kim. Welcome, Kim, and tell us about yourself.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Kim. I'm based in Ōtautahi and have the pleasure of working in an arts and mental health space. So Ōtautahi Creative Spaces is a creative community of people who've experienced mental distress and who really enjoy being creative together. So we're mostly a visual arts and creative writing place, and there's kind of no limits to what we get up to. So we really love working in the spirit of experimentation and risk-taking, creative risk-taking, and gently exploring whatever resources and materials that we've got at hand. And in my own life, I really love, I guess, finding beauty in the everyday. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for beach combing, and I really love the ability to be out in nature and feeling the sea breeze in my hair and, finding treasures on the beach. And for me, it's all about storytelling. It's all about thinking, where did these objects come from and where were they going? So the necklace I'm wearing, for example, is made of plastic fishing floats from fishing nets. And so creativity doesn't have to be, and play doesn't have to be using flash materials. It can be just using what we find in the world around us. So I think in my life, it's all about enabling others to express themselves creatively and to overcome the voices in our heads that say, I haven't got a creative bone in my body, or creativity is not for me. It's about reclaiming play that we enjoyed as children and that we have every right to have as adults, because I reckon play is a kind of a fundamental and universal human right. So that's me.
That's awesome. Great to hear about the connection between play and your own life and how that kind of connects you with the world around you. Up next, I'd like to pass over to Stephanie. Stephanie, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Kia ora, everybody. I'm Stephanie, and I am a poet, and I like to take words off the page and into all sorts of other realms and explore the poetics that occur in different spaces and with different formats. Play is a very important part of my creative process. I was lucky enough to be brought up in a very play-focused home, and then I never got the memo that we were supposed to stop playing as we became adults. So I've continued to play as much as possible, although it can be a little bit distracting because it does sometimes get in the way of doing the repetitive, productive things that are part of being a person in the world. But at the same time, it makes things just so much more fun and interesting. And I believe that all play is something that you hold on to and builds on other things. So there is no play is lost. everything is moving us forwards into something else, because play has this amazing thing where we tailor it exactly to the point in our lives that we are. So if we think about the 6 Cent Mahai's flow chart, and we've got the skill level and we've got the difficulty, and the sweet spot is where the skill level that you have and the difficulty of the task are so evenly matched, but the difficulty of the task is just a little bit higher than what your skill level is, and that's the real sweet spot. That's what we do in play, and that's also what we're able to do in our creative processes, because we get to set our own creative process. So I do think that you could argue that all creativity is actually a form of play. I also work at Creative Waikato, and I do creative coaching and help people to enjoy their creative lives more. And something that I often talk to people about is how to reconnect with the joy of creative play.
Awesome. Great to have you here and to kind of share the parts of that journey and how that kind of resonates through all facets of life. Finally, joining us, I've been really lucky to have worked with all of the people in this Zoom, but this next person I've worked with for the longest. He's been a long-time collaborator and friend. Welcome, Chris. Please tell us about yourself.
Kia ora e te whānau. Lovely to be here tonight. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeremy, for inviting me, and it's so lovely to share such a creative panel. Thank you for the privilege. Oh, and they spelled my name right. That's great. Lam Sam. And people get that wrong all the time. Hey, I'm based in Wellington, and I mainly write and produce music and interactive shows for children aged 3 to 8. And so hanging out with kids a lot means that there's a lot of play in my creative roles, and I really enjoy learning from children and from parents about how they incorporate play into their family. And I like to try and reflect that through my art back to the kids and give them permission through my creativity to continue that play. When I was in my band called the Funky Monkeys, which were kind of like the New Zealand Wiggles for 13 years, we had this saying that we wanted kids to be kids. We want to let kids be kids through what we do. And that has very much continued into my solo career now. And I have written books for children. I've been published by the Tate Museum in London, picture book. I have written for the New Zealand School Journal, and I quite often, when there are events, get asked to come and MC, be master of ceremonies for events that include young people. So I've had the great fortune to work with the NZSO doing their education concerts for schools, and also more recently the Royal New Zealand Ballet with their education concerts too. So lots of music, dance, writing, those are kind of my sandboxes. And I think the purpose of what I try and do with my own energy and time and creativity is to enable kids and reflect back to them opportunities for them to enjoy play, not only just by themselves, but with their whānau and their friends as well.
Awesome. As you can hear, we've got a really great group of people who just embody what it means to be playful and to have that as part of their lives and their practice and just their kind of whole outlook on the world around them. And I think that that's really inspiring, and that was part of the reason for bringing these people together to share with us tonight. So I want to continue our discussion, and I've got one more question where we'll kind of go around the room and then we'll just move into more of a free-flowing discussion. But starting, this question goes to everyone. And we've already touched on this a little bit, but I want to know more about kind of how you include play as part of your creative process, and whether that is in a kind of general sense or a specific memory sense or some other sense of how you want to kind of unpick what that kind of broad question might be. And I'm going to start with Laura, just because we're going to go in the same order just for consistency. And so Laura, how do you include play as a part of your creative process?
That's mostly all I do, actually, as my creative process. I play hard every day in the rehearsal room, when I'm making, when I'm training performers, and when I'm facilitating others through a creative process. I play while I'm exploring ideas that may or may not make it into a piece of theatre. I play when I'm in that icky phase where there's a show and it's got a deadline and we're opening and we're at that horrible stage where there's nothing there and all the things I hoped it would be and it's not materializing and I'm going, that's exactly when I play the hardest. So yeah, it's my go-to when I'm stuck, when I don't know my next step, is to play an experiment. And I think, playing is not about achieving a result. It's about having an experience. A kid doesn't go out to play to achieve something. They just play. And it's a fundamental mechanism for learning. So I guess I'm a player who makes plays, and I learn and discover as I do that. One of my creative mentors, John Britton, says a key idea for the rehearsal room, key principle for the rehearsal room is pursue pleasure. Play is inherently linked to pleasure for me. Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss, seek the joy in what you're doing, mess around, play. And of course, messing around and play can be deeply, deeply serious. When I watch my kids play, it's really serious. It matters. They totally inhabit the rules and they make the rules together and they agree on them. So playing doesn't mean not taking things seriously. I guess for me, it means absolutely committing to joyfully exploring the moment you're in, and trying not to limit yourself. Trying not to. It's a process. One of the main things I teach is to remember your innate inner child. Some people stop playing when they grow up. I use these because I don't feel I ever am close to doing that. Don't. Kids have creativity. They have artistry innate. I try and encourage my actors and myself, don't lose this innate capacity. Don't lose it. When we play with ideas in the rehearsal room, we commit to playing like kids do. Go hard out, go all in. I figure we can learn so much from kids. They are deadly serious in how they play. They play with their whole selves, their body and mind together. They don't separate body, mind, and imagination. They're all smooshed together gloriously. So yeah, a lot of what I do in the rehearsal room and part of my creative process is the remembering of what we know already, and kind of stripping away some of the societal conditioning that's maybe taken us away from that path. So yeah, playing rehearsal room is purposeful, not towards any explicit goal. Freedom from an outcome, which I think is incredibly liberating. Play for play's sake. Creating, stimulating possibility, stimulating imagination, seeking joy. And I suppose that can look like some specific examples: improvisation in the rehearsal room. It can be trying out scenes with a new set of rules, breaking rules, making new rules, maybe playing with how I put things in relationship with each other. Some things that maybe don't or shouldn't go together. Let's see how that looks when they go together. Experiment with how our bodies move, how we can do the familiar in unfamiliar ways. What happens if that character solo goes with that character solo, and what happens when we bring these two worlds together? What emerges? I suppose it's not what you do, but how you do it as well. I guess playfulness is always the state is important to consider as well. So a state that exhibits spontaneity, manifests joy, sense of humor, which we need at the moment more than ever. And I think something that really limits my students is in the relationship to producing ideas, is often their state of being. So anxiety or stress that can result in creative blocks, can have a negative impact on their self-confidence, willingness to share ideas, and the resultant work. So yeah, a lot of what I do is cultivating a state of playfulness where people are free to play and explore and experiment and discover.
Awesome. Well, there's a lot in there, and a lot that really kind of resonates with the way that I've seen your work kind of develop and the way that it's kind of presented, but also a lot in there that really becomes kind of useful tricks for how we can kind of do that in our own lives, and to remove kind of the context from things, but really kind of proceeding joyfully into situations. So that's really exciting. Kim, same question. Where does that all sit for you?
Well, Jeremy, you mentioned a memory, and I've got this memory when I was probably about 5, and I was given a piece of black card and something to scratch with, and as I scratched into the card, the colours emerged. And I think just the ability for play and creativity to produce magic is what I'm thinking about. And, as you said, Laura, the world is a really difficult place to be at the moment, and it's stressful. And so the importance of play for me is about having the chance to see those colours coming through, and to be surprised, and to be in that state of joy, and to be able to push aside the stresses and the things that drag us down. And you mentioned freedom, and the the freedom to have a go and to stop if you don't like the way things are going. So I think we're also conditioned to produce outcomes and to produce them to perfection. That play counteracts those, if you like, rules. There's so many rules in life. And in the studio setting where I work, it's really interesting that people sometimes really apologize if they screw something up, or they don't finish it, or they feel they've got this obligation to complete things. And we're trying to always create an environment where trying things out and experimenting is what's most important, and enjoying the process. And if it all disappears at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But also another aspect which I think I'll bring in, it might be a little bit of a side issue, but identifying as a person who enjoys creativity and enjoys play is something that's really important for our mental health. And so the more that we have opportunities to do it and to get confidence, as you said, Laura, the much better we can feel about ourselves. So I think there's a really close correlation between play and creativity and well-being. And the more we create space for that in our busy lives, the more well we'll be as a community.
That's awesome. It really kind of resonates with me how you talk about the focus on, or putting the focus on process rather than product, and really celebrating what it means to just be immersed in the doing of a thing, regardless of what it becomes. And I think that that's something that we often forget. Yeah, because we're so focused on this deadline and this output and this thing. Stephanie, I know that process kind of informs a lot of what you're doing, and you were telling us a little bit before about some processes that you're kind of working through at the moment. Where does this kind of idea of kind of play as your creative process kind of resonate for you?
On the most basic level, for me, play is actually something that I do to iron my brain, to get rid of the static that builds up. So there is an element, and I think this is really common for lots of people with a creative practice, that we need it to be able to go into a focused state, that then when we come out of it on the other side, we're better, we feel better, and we're more well in the world. So for whatever magical reason that is. So today, for example, I was feeling very scattered and heavy in my brain, and I got out my sewing machine, and I've been sewing things out of tissue paper. So sewing tissue paper to tissue paper to sheets, and just seeing what then resonates inside of me when I look at those different things. So putting something next to something else, and then going, oh, what am I experiencing when I see that? And looking for things that sort of ring or echo inside me. Also, in terms of play, I use a lot of questions. So I tend to just have questions, and I'm always asking myself, what will happen if? So I might be just sitting around quietly, just doing nothing, and then I'm like, oh, what would happen if? And then that's the spark that then motivates me. And it also structures the play. It gives me a container, because play is also a container. It has limits and rules that we put in for ourselves that are exactly matched to what we need at that moment, and then we dismantle them and then remake them at another point. So I think that within all of that, one of the really interesting paradoxes, I guess, about creative play is that on the one hand, play is something that we do when we have all our other needs met, when we're not stressed, when we have the energy, when we've been fed. This is part of the idea of, when animals play, the animals that do play, one of the preconditions of 5 elements is that they are in a non-stressed situation. So quite often what I see when I'm working with people is people are very stressed and yet they're wanting to create and they can't work out how to get there because they can't sort of transition into that state. But on the other hand, if you can find a way to transition, that also in itself reduces the stress, because it creates that safety and that sense of connection with the self. So it's an interesting paradox. So it's about sort of climbing forwards and getting into the play state, and then that play state enabling the ease and the comfort that allows more creativity to happen. I see it as a gateway.
Awesome. I think it's really fascinating talking about that paradox and how you can kind of build pathways to kind of counteract that in your own practice by kind of having different triggers or different kind of connections into things. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I do want to hand over to Chris to bring him into this. My friend, where is this kind of sitting for you? What does play mean for you in your creative process?
Great question, Dr. Jeremy. I like to think of play like a torch. You don't always need a torch or a flashlight in your life, because sometimes you can see everything, but there are times when you are working on a creative project where it's completely pitch black and you don't really know what you're going to be doing. You know kind of where you want to be going, but you haven't found the path to get there yet. It's like an artist looking at a blank canvas. And sometimes play is the thing that unlocks or has unlocked solutions in my creative endeavors before. And I will lean on it a couple of times on purpose to see if we can find a solution just by freeing our minds a bit and just throwing open the floor to suggestions. And one of the ways that I know this has happened a lot over the past is I am musical director or co-musical director of a show called Kids for Kids, and we see 10,000, we used to see 10,000 kids around the country performing in choirs around different venues, and we would have to come up with choreography for these songs that we were singing, and we wouldn't always know, what move should we do? And sometimes during rehearsal, Jeremy's wife, Courtney, is also one of the musical directors. We'll just look at each other and go, hey, kids, there's 500 of you here. We've got 500 ideas. What moves should we do in the song? And then you just say, go. And they'll all show you their moves. And then you're kind of looking around going, oh, that one looks great. So you actually take offers from the kids. The kids are great at unlocking some of these solutions and shining a light on, creative pathways that you may not have thought of. So I always like to use play as a way of finding a different way of looking at things. The other way that I find play sometimes shines a light on creative solutions is when you least expect it. And I remember a memory, my oldest boy is 13 now, but when he was 1, he and I were just playing and we had a great game going. It was called Run, Stop. And I would say, run, 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 run. And then I'd say, stop. And we'd both stop and we'd laugh. And then there'd be anticipation. And then I'd say, run, run. And you get the idea. Well, as we were doing that, after that session, I kind of thought, actually, I wonder if that would be a cool song that kindergarten kids would like. And to this date, my song, the Run Stop, is on Spotify. It's had over 300,000 plays. It's my most listened to song ever. And it's a 2-word song that was completely born out of play. So sometimes you get that flashlight of play going, and those little solutions or those gems that you never even thought of can really aid that creative process.
That's awesome. And it's really inspiring to hear the connection to children in our lives and how that kind of sparks creativity. And that's been a thread that's kind of come up in a range of different discussions. So I just wanted to kind of put this out to anyone who feels like they want to leap into to answer. Thinking about kind of our connection to young people and how children can be such a kind of powerful model or kind of example for the freedom of play. do you find kind of, I know Chris has just sort of talked about this, but I'm wondering for anyone else, are there ways that you've kind of found connections in with the young people in your lives about how kind of play becomes part of your connection or your bond, or kind of part of a tradition, or just something else that kind of emerges? Jump in, Stephanie. Yeah.
One little thing to say, which is that there is something that's stuck in my head at the moment that a 4-year-old said to me, and that when I was talking to her, and she said, Mary Jane's been crawling, like crawl, but made into a word, crawling. She's been crawling. It just sort of has re-emerged years later. It's like, why am I so fascinated and obsessed with that particular phrase? But that's something that I do get from playing with kids, is often like little sparks.
Funny turns of phrase. I know that in working with my son Wolf on his music, a lot of the way that we'll approach the songwriting is weird turns of phrase, or weird kind of word games that then become kind of repetitive things that emerge into, oh yeah, that's a funny song, let's write something about that. And that's a big part of our kind of shared experiences and these kind of playful, creative moments, which is really, really exciting. Chris?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to like playing with Lego. That was the thing my cousins and I did all the time. And then when I got into my 20s, I sold all my Lego. It was the time for playing had stopped. And now I've got 3 sons, and Lego has become big again, and I'm back into Lego, which is fantastic. So we play a lot with Lego in our whānau. But on my desk in front of me, I've got like a little jar of just Lego bits. And I find sometimes just taking a 5-minute break to build something, it can often help me feel more refreshed from the task that I'm doing. And so for an example, I actually built you, Dr. Jeremy. So there's you. Call you the Wizard of Music. You're holding a baton there. I worked really hard on the mohawk. But
That's awesome.
Things like that, kids have helped me regain that which I gave up. And I think that's really important to hold that part of yourself for as long as you can. Don't sell your toys, kids. Don't sell your toys. Hold on to them.
Kim?
My boys still give each other Lego for Christmas. They're in the early 20s, so long may that last. But I was just thinking, this is rangatahi that we work with, and just the idea of building and construction. And one of the projects that we did together was getting a piano. This is no good for people who are composers, but deconstructing the piano. So deciding to make something out of every part of the piano that we possibly could. And the most amazing creatures emerged, and earrings and sculptures and paintings. And so I think it's that element of play that came in was having permission to destroy beautiful things, but make new beautiful things out of them. Because it really feels like a bad thing, doesn't it, to pull a piano apart? But it was done in the spirit of play and love and creativity. And the person who gave us the piano knew that we were going to do that. And so it was a cycle of creativity that the young people really stepped into with great passion.
Well, that's super exciting, because it brings new life to old objects and kind of changes the way that you kind of see the world. That's really kind of inspiring. Laura, I think you're also going to kind of say something in that space.
Yeah, I was just having flashbacks from what Chris said. My mum made me sell my Lego as well for a new bike, and I never forgave her. The play and kids. I love playing with kids. You can't enter into this shared experience of being truly present. They don't seem to worry as much about, mental time travel, so they're not sort of worrying about what's coming or regretting what's been, but they're kind of right here in the moment, and they just remind me, they're the masters. I just think everything we need to know, just play with a kid. So they remind me of the importance of being present, how important that is, to be there fully embodied in that moment.
And it's such a great kind of pathway out of the stresses of everyday life and what we're facing to kind of find that moment of presence. Chris?
Can I share the story of your son and songs? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So Jeremy and I have worked on projects over the years, and so I quite often go to Hamilton from Wellington, and we sit in a studio for days on end and just write music, which is fantastic. But there was this one occasion where I think we were doing a 3 or 4 day stint, and Dr. Jeremy's son, Wolfgang, was with us. And so we were minding him and being creative at the same time, being responsible. And Wolf would come up with these, he would walk into the studio completely dressed in these incredible costumes that his parents had made available to him. And each character that he was with would have this name and superpower. But there was one character over those 3 or 4 days that just kept coming back, and it was this character called the Wolf Wasp. And so we kind of thought, well, we've got a couple of hours at the end of the session. Why don't we try and write a song about the Wolf Wasp? And so that was the trigger. So play and role play was the trigger for us to create a song, which ended up on Wolf's first album, which was called 7, which he wrote when he was 7 years old. And he's just released album number 3, which is
third
called,
album,
which is called 9, because he's 9, and we did the sequel follow-up. So those are 2 chapters of my life which were completely and utterly seeded by role play from a child, which is pretty exciting. And I will always remember that as a time where, you know, we weren't in charge. Wolf was telling us all about the story, and our job was to try and capture it in a way that honored that.
Yeah, it's such a fond memory, and still kind of listening back to that song is, I mean, it's a highlight in our house, and it gets played all the time, and it's good fun.
It's not often that I get to pretend to be a bank robber.
Yeah. Awesome. In thinking about that and how that kind of makes us, hearing kind of the way that people react with kind of the play with kids, and how that is a really powerful connection to our whānau and to the young people around us, I think that also for me has a real connection into the way that I feel kind of personally, and connects to my well-being, and kind of knowing that there's these kind of moments of joy that you're kind of engaged with the young people who are around you, but also what that does for you, and kind of sparking your own joy, and kind of finding those moments of gratitude. And it feels to me like this is a great kind of segue into the connection between well-being and play, and how play becomes a kind of useful tool or kind of mechanism for supporting ways of processing the world around us, or dealing with stress, or kind of finding those kind of pathways. And I know Stephanie's talked a little bit about that in terms of the dichotomy between the reward of play and the struggle to kind of get into it. And Kim has also mentioned a little bit around that connection between play and well-being. So I just want to open that up to the floor. Kind of where does that kind of feel like it kind of sits, or what kind of leaps to mind when you think about play, well-being, and how that resonates with you personally or with the people that you work with? Stephanie.
So in Burkhart's 5 elements of play and animals, again, one of the things is that one of the elements is that it is not a completed action, and that it repeats but with variety. So one of the things that happens in our particular world is that productivity is a very, very strong social value. It's given a kind of almost it's got a moral component, and play is something where productivity is not built in, as Laura was saying earlier. So it can be a real relief. It can actually be a space in which you can relax that productivity and that obsession with outcome and with competitive keeping up, or whatever it is that's driving that productive urge in yourself, and actually just have the spaciousness to engage with the world and with yourself, because there is no play without presence. You have to pay attention as you play, or it's not going to be any fun, and you're not going to get anywhere. Nothing good's going to happen. So if you're paying attention, then also you are freed from that rigidity, from the repetition, from the completion, the driving sort of it can be very, very tiring for people. So I think play is liberating in that way.
It's awesome. Opening that up to the liberation is just so rewarding, and it is such a kind of great pathway out of the constant kind of grind of I know a lot of people have been constantly in Zooms, and here we are in another one, but this is a really inspiring Zoom to be in, but kind of getting that break away from the screen and kind of dealing with all of the things and just being able to sit at a piece of paper and draw something, or sit at a piano and like just kind of let the fingers do a thing on the instrument and see what that becomes. And I know in thinking about collaborating with Laura on the show Where Our Shadows Meet, and thinking about playing the score for that, every time I started to think about what I was doing, I would lose kind of what it was supposed to be. Provided that you could kind of stay present and stay kind of engaged with what was in front of you and not kind of think about what my fingers are doing, it would flow freely and it was playful and it was kind of responsive and really exciting. But that's kind of tricking yourself to stay in that space is an interesting challenge. Kim?
That just made me think of a conversation I had with one of the young artists that we support, and he talked about how he'd had heaps of counselling and, talking therapy, and it was when he has the opportunity to make things with his hands that he feels like he's really making progress. And it's, I guess, about being able to give your brain a rest, stop thinking about the experiences or the trauma or the distress that's can be so dominant in our lives, and the process of making and using your hands is a different way of processing those thoughts and feelings. They don't go away, but you kind of have a break from them. But I was also thinking about, I'm going to have a moment of forgetting what I was going to say. I'll just pause there because I've lost my train of thought.
That's okay. Come back in when you're ready. But yeah, thinking about that, the way that we can utilize play as a kind of pathway for well-being, particularly in processing trauma, feels particularly relevant now as we're coming out of still kind of emerging through or coming out of, or depending on who you talk to, kind of where that sits, but this kind of collective trauma that we've all been in, and that resonates with people in different ways. And I think that's where the kind of framework for this kaupapa and wanting to have this conversation became so important, because it's about trying to unlock that potential for people, and knowing that as creative practitioners, that can be that is part of what we do, and how we kind of make sense of our world, and unlocking or shining a light on the pathways into that becomes a really useful thing for people, and working out kind of how you can grasp moments of creative process and have them be part of your life without the need to make a painting that anyone else sees, or kind of do anything that's for anyone else. It's about, as was discussed earlier, celebrating the process and being kind of lost in that moment of doing just for the sake of doing, and kind of what that means, and how in thinking about that and thinking about kind of ways into this. How much is it about having a kind of habit that opens the kind of door into that? Like, does it become easier to have kind of playful moments if you, say, pop it in your calendar at 10 o'clock every day, and I'm going to do something playful now? Chris?
I wrote to this specifically in my little notes here. I said, I think it is important to make time for play, and I think it's important to make play easy to reach. And the reason you want to do that is because I think sometimes in our busy lives, it's hard to schedule time to play, but I think what you should do is schedule potential for it. So you need to make sure that you've got something nearby or on the go that you can just pop along to for 10 minutes, half an hour, and just do it when the time is right, because as creatives know, the muse doesn't always turn up when you schedule it. So sometimes you just need to have potential for it to be there.
Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I think that creativity and play can you can practice that as a mindset as well. You can kind of make your creative mindset and creative strategies part of everything you do. Even if it's, I think Stephanie asked some questions earlier to say, what was the question, Stephanie? Say, what if?
What will happen if?
What will happen if? I love that. So I have lots of these questions kind of scattered around various places for me to come across them. What would happen if? Or what if even? Or just anything that can make you look for new or different ways of doing things, different ways of playing the same games. If you're going for a walk, different tasks on your daily walk. What can you look for? How can you see things new with new eyes? How can you let inspiration in? For me, it's almost like it's an openness, a willingness to receive. There's a French word called disponibilité, which is from a French theatre practitioner called Lecoq, and it's one of the key things that I try and cultivate in students. And it's an openness, and it's also an availability and a responsivity to the world around us, which is obviously what we're doing as artists. But for me, that's it's almost a daily practice. So yeah.
Awesome. Kim?
And the great thing about creativity is that you can take it everywhere with you. When we're talking with the artists we support, we're really encouraging that regular practice, because I feel like the wellbeing benefits kind of multiply the more you do it. But I totally agree with you, Chris, that you can't kind of schedule it and be sure that the feelings are going to be there on the day. But as you said, Laura, just taking a walk in your neighbourhood, and I feel like lockdowns really helped us probably get that message out and about the importance of those rituals. So looking closely in your neighbourhood, getting down really low with your camera on your phone and taking some photos of things that you've never noticed before, having a notebook in your bag wherever you go, scribbling down some thoughts or a drawing or a crazy conversation you overheard. You can take it with you everywhere. And it also means that people can't take it away from you. So if you're in a situation and you're feeling anxious, you've always got that to draw on. And so that's maybe that inherent strength that play and creativity carries with it.
Chris?
One thing that you and I have employed a couple of times when we've had creative roadblocks, and only very rarely, but is using Brian Eno's oblique strategies, which is a series of cards that he and his wonderful creative companion, whose name completely has vanished. They
David Byrne, was it?
Yes, yeah. Anyway, we can look it up. Oblique strategies, 75 different ways to almost wreck an idea and completely reinvent it. So you might pick a card at random and it might say, turn it upside down. And so what does that mean for your idea? Like, it's a new way of thinking. Is there a way that turning something upside down in this will help? And sometimes it might. Or you pick another card and it says, do half as much. And you think, okay, well, what would that do to the idea that so it triggers new ways of thinking. And sometimes I think I've used those strategies as a way of playing with an idea to try and push through whatever it is that I'm stuck on. So that can be something, but you could apply that to anything. You could literally take those on a walk and look for a perspective in the things that you're seeing to think about things differently. They're great.
That's awesome. Stephanie?
I very much agree. I feel like for a lot of creative people, it's definitely like we've got a randomizer in our brain already. So it's like I can just push the little button on my brain. So if I'm standing outside waiting for the bus and I'm like, and then it's just like, bing, and then it's like, wow, what are those do those colours go together? Would they clash? What's the name? What would you rename the street as? Or like I could just come up with a gazillion things to entertain myself at the moment because of the random button in my brain. One of the things that I see people doing in order to provide that for themselves is, especially through things like Instagram, is the 30-day challenge. So there's a real rise of the 30-day challenge. I see people using that to kind of create that date with their own creative play self, because it's a daily challenge. It's like might be drawing every day for 30 days or whatever it is. And I see that being used really effectively.
Having those kind of pathways into prompting those questions or new perspectives or new ways of listening or viewing or experiencing the world becomes so exciting, and thinking about how that triggers our memories and how that triggers kind of different kind of creative responses to things becomes really inspirational in creative practice, but also just in every day. I'm aware that we're coming up to the end of our time together, and thank you so much for all of your great insights and your sharing and the kind of wisdom that you've given to the space. I want to go around the Zoom one more time and sort of ask for if there's any kind of final thoughts or kind of pathways into play that you haven't been able to share and really want to share. And then also alongside that, is there one thing that you're particularly curious about at the moment? Like, what's the thing that's driving your curiosity as you kind of immerse into play for the rest of this week? And just because I'm continuously putting Laura on the spot, I'm going to do the same again and pass to Laura first.
That's fine. I'll go with that. I'm actually just thinking how Stephanie, I think that you should record all of those questions that you ask yourself and have a little app that we can all use. I think it would be absolutely amazing. So I would love it anyway. But back to the question. I went off with that, imagining how wonderful that would be to have Stephanie asking me questions as I go about my day. Creativity, play, final thoughts. So I get a lot of people saying that, well, I'm not creative. And I don't believe that. I think that everybody is creative. I feel like we're born with it. It's universal. I think that it can maybe erode or get put away a little bit as we grow up. But I just think that some people kind of, what am I trying to say here? So some people call themselves artistic, some people call themselves not artistic. I think that everybody is. And some people think that creativity and play might mean risk and inefficiency and time and money spent without a guaranteed outcome. And I suppose I just wanted to muse that, this attitude can lead people to doing what they've always done. Time moves on, you do what you've always done, you get what you always get, kind of thing. And I think organizations and policies and things that can get stuck. And I think that's the whole point of having this conversation at such difficult times, looking around the world at the moment. We need to imagine new ways of doing things, and we need to imagine new solutions. And the more we stick with what we know in our field of knowledge, because often our expertise can be the biggest stumbling block, actually, because it's worked for us. So we'll just do it again and again and again and again. And I think, for me, it's just every day waking up with, okay, what can I do differently, or questioning the thing I've always done to see if maybe there's a better way of doing something. I just think it's universal. Creativity, play directly inspires it. And, we're kind of structuring the unknown into something known that we can share, and maybe we'll find new, better ways of doing things. So I don't think creativity is about making art. I think creativity is about responding fearlessly to being alive and kind of just discovering the next step and maybe finding new steps and new pathways into doing things.
Awesome. Thank you. Kim, same question.
Yeah, I feel very similar to you about that, Laura, that there are ways of unlocking creativity for everyone. And in our own practice, I think that really comes through keeping things really simple, not calling them art, because that is a total a block for lots of people. A lot of people have had bad experiences with that word, and bad experiences at school, for example. And they might say, I used to love art, but then a teacher said this and, I stopped. So I think softening it, using the words play and creativity makes it much more accessible. Blocking out those voices that we talked about that we have ourselves, that we can't do it and it's for other people. And then really starting with simple ideas of what colours do we enjoy, what shapes, looking at autumn leaves, just really looking at the natural world around us and making things as simple as possible. And the other trick I've kind of used with some people is asking for help, people who are really finding it hard to get involved. And I think I was at library running some printmaking workshops, and the guy who drove the book bus turned up, and he was like, he was on the edge. You could see he was really curious, and he was never going to take part. So I said, can I hold the roller, and then can you just roll that ink? And next minute he was printmaking. And so I think spontaneous, putting art in places that people don't, putting creativity and play in places people don't expect to find it. And the other image I've got in my head is a project we did with the neighbourhood policing team, and seeing them getting creative was really exciting. And people in roles like that, and the people who work in the health sector, I'm really excited about seeing how we can give people who work in those very high stress roles opportunities to be creative as well. My curiosity is around how we can give the health sector the chance to really appreciate the role that play and creativity has in our mental health and well-being. So that's it's going to take a bit of time, but thinking creatively about how we bridge the gap between the arts and the health world is something I'm really excited about.
Awesome. That sounds like a really important mission to pursue. Thank you for sharing. Stephanie.
I love the idea of tricking people into being creative. And I think we can do that for ourselves as well. So we can lay little traps to sort of lure ourselves into being creative. I agree with Laura that I think risk and inefficiency, it's really important to recognize that play is a risky business, and it's joyful, it's dangerous. And part of the reason that people give it up is that they want to protect themselves from that intensity. So also just maybe shaking it up a little bit and allowing and understanding that you're safe even if things are a little bit more intense or unknown or risky or more inefficient than what you're used to, because you become more comfortable and the joys of it will be really very self-rewarding, basically. I think that if anyone is having trouble with creative play, like getting to that play, one of the things that's really good to think about are the conditions of your psychic world. How stressed are you? And are there any ways that you can reduce the stress level? Because if you think about pandas in the zoo, and pandas only have sex when the conditions are right. So I like to think about creativity in some ways as being about, let's just think about the conditions. Am I setting my life up so that I am safe and relaxed enough that I can then creatively play? If I was a panda, would I be feeling frisky or not? Yeah, those are my final thoughts. And the thing that I'm curious about is that I have a specific thing that I'm trying to work out how to do, like a scoring of a voice. I need to be able to work out how to write it down. And when I'm looking at things like a line of bricks on a wall or something, my brain is like, oh, you could do it like this, or you could try this. But I'm still waiting for the structure of the play to appear so that I can begin actually finding out what works and doesn't work.
Awesome. That's great. Chris.
Look, I know we've reached time, but I would just encourage anyone out there who thinks perhaps they've grown up too much to just let your hair down and remember what it's like to be a kid. Do something that you enjoyed doing as a kid. and enjoy it, genuinely enjoy it. Go back to it and see if there's something in that that will give you gas in the tank to go forward in a new direction with creativity. Because I think when we're kids, we are sometimes the happiest versions of ourselves that we'll ever be. And sometimes we shelve all of that stuff for not great reasons. So let your hair down, remember what it's like to be a kid, hang out with kids. If you've got kids, really cherish those moments with them, and try and capture as much of that as you can and be in that world, because it's such a brilliant, life-giving place to be.
That's awesome. Thank you, my friend. A huge thank you to all of our panelists this evening. It's been a real joyous experience for me, a great way to spend a Monday night, to have a conversation like this, and I'm sure that it could go on for hours and hours, but we'll keep it to this time and let people go about their lives and have dinner and kind of mull on their own kind of play in their everyday lives. So I'm just going to leave with a couple of thoughts, and for me, a big thing is around that play is a big part of how we build our worlds and how we build worlds together. It's a creative process. It's a process of exploration and discovery. And like many creative processes, it's an act of kindness. It's an act of kindness to ourselves. It's an act of kindness to the people that we are with and to the world around us. It's a way that we connect to ourselves, we connect to our whānau, and we connect to our world. And moments of play help us to find space to experience magic. And that magic is a really kind of tangible, real world thing that we have access to at any moment of our lives, as long as we open ourselves up to that. So I'd like to encourage everyone to make some time today, this week, for creative play. Do something fun and spark that joy. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm going to hand over to Jamie to close us out for the evening.
Kia ora, Jeremy. Thank you so much, Laura, Kim, Chris, and Stephanie for that kōrero. I'm going to be taking a lot of things away with me. Kim's Take Creativity With You, Chris's Brian Eno's Oblique Strategies, Laura's Responding Fearlessly to Being Alive, and I will not forget being frisky like a panda, Stephanie. So thank you so much for those words. I'd also like to thank Te Taumata Toi-a-Iwi and the team for providing operational support and structure for Te Ōtautahi, and the team at Auckland Live for their assistance with the live stream tonight. If you'd like to join Te Ōtautahi or have any questions about tonight's discussion, please do get in touch. And I'll just close with a karakia. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia tūru ki whakataha ai, kia tūru ki whakataha ai, homi e, hui e, taiki e. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.